I'd like to call the February 13th Board of Education meeting to order. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any communications and recognitions?
I have two. First, I wanted to recognize the other night we had a forum here. We had a keynote speaker that discussed anxiety in children. What was really neat about that is Candace brought that issue up last spring, and it just, Allison took it upon herself and scheduled a speaker. This room was full of people. It's obviously an issue that we need to discuss and learn more about, so thank you. It was great, very informative. The second thing, and I was, about a month ago, I was at a New England track meet at Yale, and not really paying attention. I don't really know this, individual track members at the high school. It was an indoor track meet, and I was watching the long distance races, and usually the person that would go out first would always end up last, except in the instance of one Stonington young man. His name is, I think it's Reese Hammond. Yes. Yeah, he started out first, and by the time he finished, he had almost a full track behind him. He is incredible. What an elite athlete. It was awesome to watch. I guess he runs like don't quote me on it, put it in the minutes, but I think it's around a 4:20 mile. So, 4:20, there we go, 4:24. So, way to go, Reese. Thank you.
Wow. Go ahead.
I want to just take a minute to recognize Dean's Middle School. For the second year in a row, it's been identified by the Connecticut State Department of Education as a school of distinction. Last year, it was recognized for high academic performance. This year, it's recognized for high performance and growth for all students in mathematics, and especially impressive that it's recognized for high growth for high needs students, which includes our English learners, our students with disabilities, and students that are eligible for free and reduced lunch, for high growth in both ELA, which includes reading, and also in mathematics. So congratulations, Jen, and to your whole team. I also wanted to provide a little bit more detail than Dr. Riley had at his fingertips last week, or last meeting, about Stonington Middle School their proposal being accepted by the New England League of Middle Schools. Tim Smith and his team will be presenting a session there in Providence at the it's entitled Enhancing Learning Opportunities Through the Encore Classes. So they'll be presenting March 9th at the Rhode Island Convention Center in Providence, so we wish the Stingrays well. That particular structure that he and his team have created at the middle school is getting attention inside the state and outside of the state, so we're very proud of that, and hopefully going to be taking that show to DC with some Fulbright friends soon.
Wow. Congratulations. I do, Marianne took one of mine, that's okay. I want to thank Gary Shettle for attending the Board of Finance meeting on February 5th, losing track of my months here. It was greatly appreciated. They expressed their appreciation, and thank you for answering the questions that they had provided, and this just helps bridge our little bit of our communication gap and puts us working forward with them and improving our communication. Thank you. And also, Candace is home from the hospital. Surgery went well. She had surgery yesterday and is already home and is a little bit more comfortable than she was yesterday. So we send our prayers and our thoughts to her. Do we have comments from citizens? Go ahead. Go up to the microphone. I'm not sure if it's on. I will remind everybody that there is a 5-minute limit per speaker and 20 minutes per topic.
Is it working? Oh, great.
Perfect.
I'm a crew coach, and usually I have a big plastic megaphone, so bear with me while I
That's perfect.
work with the technology. Quick introduction while handouts are being circulated. My name is John Thornell. I'm a girls varsity coach at Stonington Crew, and I've been with the program about 4 years, and different capacities, coaching in different boats, and also been on the Friends of Stonington Crew board in a capacity of working on the website, communication, and of course fundraising. So I'm here tonight as a varsity coach and learning about some of the needs that we have from the program, and I have 2 requests that I wanted to share at the end. I have worked with Brian Marone, and he's been really helpful in helping me with my learning curve as a new varsity coach. And it's good timing that I think last meeting there was some questions about Stonington Crew, and met with Heidi and connected with her and shared a lot of information. And I think because of the amount of information, she just asked me to come here and talk to you because it is quite a bit to share. So I hope to go through some of that, give you a little bit of background on the team, and then also formulate the requests that we have for 2 items. So first page, if you could go to the program background. Stonington Crew is a 3-season sport. Primarily, we race in the spring. That's our main season. That's when we're considered a varsity team. We do also race in the fall, and we have winter training, indoor winter training, to prepare for the spring. We compete in the Connecticut Public Schools Rowing Association, which is a group of 14 or so other public schools. That's our primary league that we compete in. We're also a part of the New England Interscholastic Rowing Association with 70 other public and private schools, and we do quite well there. In the CPSRAs, we've won numerous medals. Most recently, the novice 8 won a gold medal last year at the state championships. So it's a pretty successful program, and we're very proud of that. It's been around for about over 2 decades as well, and it went varsity, I think it was in the year 2000. About the participants that we have about 60 to 80 students per year that are in the program. Each season, so it's roughly a couple hundred kids that will participate. And they're very driven athletically and academically. The GPA last year for all the kids was 3.7. Each year over the duration of the program, over the 2 decades, we have 1 to 2 students on average will earn scholarship into college. It could be athletic, it could be academic, or it could be needs-based, but a lot of that is driven from rowing and getting kids into college. In my time, I've enjoyed watching the graduates go on to college and staying in touch with them, and I know that we've had over 40% of the kids, at least in my time that I've been with the program, have rowed or are continuing to row in college. So it's a great opportunity that this program is providing for students. To support that is a tremendous amount of work. Friends of Stonington Crew is a group of volunteers and parent volunteers, and it's a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We raise each year about $100,000. And this is through rower fees that make up about 1/3 of that, and it's through fundraising that makes up about 2/3 of that. This has been deliberate in the last couple of years because we've gone through periods before my time where we would come out on top and have a profit, and sometimes we would not. And we really wanted to stabilize that and be able to provide a better program for the students in the shape of having better equipment and having funds available if something were to go wrong with equipment and things like that. So you can see a breakout of some of the different sources of income. I'll highlight that the rowers pay in the fall, they pay $375 to participate. And in the spring, they pay $225. This is burdensome to the families, that they're paying this much, plus they're doing a lot of the fundraising. On our expense side, last year we spent about $80,000, and you can see the list of where that goes to. We pay for coaching, we pay for our boats, of course, and all of our other equipment, fuel, maintenance, and so on. Stonington Public Schools contributes $13,000 for coaches in the spring. They cover for 3 coaches. Sometimes we've been up to 5, 6, 7 coaches that we will have in the spring.
Excuse me, that is 5 minutes?
Okay. Then the request at the end is to, for this year, to have a fund for rental truck. The truck that we have used in the past has broken down the day of a regatta, and we would like to have for this year a more reliable truck that we can use. And then I would also like to request that it would be in the budget for next year. And the other request is to have Stonington Public Schools provide for a 4th coach. Okay, there's details in there. You can have, I'd be happy to answer questions afterwards. So thank you.
One thing I can answer now is the coaching, that's in the contract for the teacher's contract, and that's stipend, so that's not something we have control over. The contracts and that negotiation was just completed. Thank you very much for your comments.
My name is Rob Simmons. I'm a resident of 268 North Main Street in Stonington. Let me begin by thanking all the members of the Board of Ed for the hard work they do. I have, in years past, spent 8 years on the Board of Police Commissioners and Board of Selectmen. I've attended over 200 meetings, chairing probably 3/4 of them, and I know how difficult and stressful it can be, and I appreciate your allowing me to speak for just a few minutes. I also want to thank Coach Thornell for bringing us up to date with some of this information. I was involved in 5 budgets as a member of the Board of Selectmen, and I actually had no idea of the funding issues relative to the Stonington High School crew. That for every dollar that the town provides, the crew raises $3.75 private funds. That's an extraordinary ratio. I don't know of any other sport that has that ratio, and I think it's an adverse ratio, and I think it's something that needs to be addressed. I'm also concerned about the issue of the truck. I went over and looked at the truck yesterday, and they're asking for a rental truck that's going to cost for the remainder of this year $2,800, and in the next fiscal year $4,200. Rental because it's cheaper to rent than to buy. And the rental trucks come fully equipped and fully operational, whereas the truck that they're currently using, a Ford F-250 XL pickup, has 2 broken running boards, a damaged lower door panel, rusting bed attachments and bed of the truck, bald tires, rusty wheels, rusting panels. The bed is rusting and it's kind of dinged up. And really, it's not an adequate vehicle to be traveling around New England or going to upstate New York or down to Philadelphia for events, hauling a trailer that has close to $200,000 worth of equipment on it. It's broken down on numerous occasions, and actually private individuals have had to provide their own vehicles to take the shelves and the equipment. That's just not right. Using this truck is not a safe practice, in my opinion. And as somebody who's been involved in crew and in high school, as a high school student, if the boats don't show, the kids don't row. It's kind of unusual, but there are a lot of other sports where you're not dependent on the delivery of your equipment with a truck and a trailer. The boats don't show, the kids don't row. I understand that one of the members has suggested that we have a sports subcommittee. It's a great suggestion. I encourage that, and a sports committee could look at some of the long-term issues that we have in our sports program. And it's a fabulous sports program. I've been following Reese Hammond. I was a miler in college. He hasn't beat me yet, but he's getting close. How great it is that what we're doing. But we have an immediate question here, an immediate problem, and that is the safe delivery of this equipment for our kids so that this wonderful program can continue. And I would urge the board in section 9 of tonight's agenda to approve the $2,800 in funding for a rental truck for the high school teams for the remainder of this fiscal year, 2019-2020, and then $4,200 in funding for the fiscal year 2020-2021. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. You are. I'm impressed. We'll write that one down.
Hi, I'm Rachel Odell. I live at 94 Stillman Avenue in Pawcatcuk. I am a para in the district, and I just kind of wanted to say a few. Sue McVeigh, you all know Sue McVeigh, our union president, spoke last week and mentioned some of our a small portion of what the job description says for our positions. And I just kind of wanted to mention that beyond those job descriptions, there are some paras in the district that have specialized training, whether it be behavioral or treadmill protocol or whatever. They also, a lot of them will do anything that they're asked of without complaining. And I feel like the paras have kind of been put on the back burner for a little while. And I just would really, really, really like to ask that you please think about what you feel we're worth in the classroom and in other areas of the schools, and really think about how you can kind of help along with the contract negotiations this year. Thank you.
Thank you. If that's it for comments from citizens, we can move on to the consent agenda. I do need a motion for approval.
Move to approve consent agendas, item A through D is submitted. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? So moved. Next, we have our curriculums for the second read. Are there any questions on any of the curriculums that are listed? The grade 6 ELA, Algebra 2, or the Encore classes? I think the last time we did approve them as a group, we did not have to do it individually. So if we do have a motion for approval of those items.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? We have a few more new curriculums. Thank you. Those encores look interesting. Are there any questions or comments on the monthly reports? For committee reports, we do have the Finance Committee draft minutes. Farouk, do you have anything to add or any comments?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll move on to the 2020-21 budget approval.
Motion for you to discuss?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to thank John for an excellent introductory presentation. A first. We'll have more chapters I hope to follow. What you've presented reveals really an obvious imbalance in the organization of this sport, and which then will have a negative impact on the students. There seems actually to be more time and energy spent in making the sport happen and less time and energy given available for honing skills and inspiring athleticism, which a sport is supposed to be about. The resulting negative impact that this has on the student rowers is what we as a board need to be concerned with. We need to help readjust this imbalance. If a first step is asking for funds to be placed in the budget cycle to rent a dependable truck, yeah, it's our responsibility to do that. So I'd like to make a motion to approve funding for a rental truck for the Stonington Crew team for $2,800 for the remainder of this fiscal year, 219 to 220, and $4,200 in the fiscal year 220 to 221.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I have a couple of points. First of all, I don't know the mechanism really to give them money for this fiscal year. It would be a line item transfer, and I don't know if we can actually do that. And that being said, moving on to the next year's budget, both my children rode crew. Actually, no, they didn't. Just one of my children. They didn't. No, they didn't.
The other one wanted to.
The other one, no, she didn't.
Then you should know what I'm
Sorry,
talking about.
one of my daughters rode crew. And I said to someone, I have the hammers on my wall to show that. Well, I feel for the crew team, and I really do. I think that we need to look at athletics as a holistic and a global thing. There's a lot of, if you asked any coach at the high school, they'd want more money. And singling out one team right off the bat to say that they get the money, I think is premature. We also have no idea what the Board of Finance is going to do to our budget. So I think saying right now to give them $4,200, if we're going to discuss it at all, which I'm not for, I think we should do it after the Board of Finance comes back. If they cut us $100,000, we really need to see where all the money's going. So I have 2 points. I think that our budget right now is not set enough to give the crew team $4,200 for next year, and I don't think it's right to give one team, to single out one team. If you want to put in $4,200 for the entire athletic program and let the athletic director decide where it should go and who needs it the most, and have the other teams have an opportunity to come speak with us, to form the athletic committee that we had for years. I was on it. I think that, and look at all the athletic funding, we've talked about this a lot, the fundraising, the boosters, what the boosters provide, how much the kids are fundraising, how much everyone pays. One of my daughters swam, we had to pay pool rental. So every parent of an athlete pays money. If my kid played lacrosse, one of my kids did play lacrosse, and we had to buy.
You sure?
I'm sure she played lacrosse and field hockey. We had to buy the sticks, the goggles, the shin guards, the uniforms. We didn't pay to play, but we paid $300, for all that equipment as well. So that's my position on crew.
Can I just make a comment real quick?
Not quickly.
Not quickly?
Just go ahead. No, go ahead. Take your time.
So, full disclosure, none of my kids did the crew
Are you sure?
program. Yes. But when I think of Stonington High School, and when I'm out visiting my family up in Massachusetts, and I talk about Stonington Public Schools, I talk about the drama program, and I talk about crew. So 2 exceptional programs we have. And the thing is that they raise so much money. They raise on their own an incredible amount of $102,000. So they have a lot invested in making their program work. And if I drive down the road and see them broken down on the side of the road, and we haven't supported them with after they've raised $102,000 with a rental truck, I think it's shameful.
Can you pass those pictures around? Maybe is a little bit impactful to see what piece of rusty junk is hauling this around.
And
see it, I know what
yeah,
I feel.
no, and what's
Well,
the
don't feel, think.
I'm thinking. I certainly understand the issue. I do.
Yeah.
But, the track team has 100 kids. It's a good program. I'm not denying it's a good program and it's great for the rowers. I'm just saying, I think we have no idea where our budget's going next year. We have no idea. And to say we're gonna rent a truck for $4,200 versus we're gonna have a dean of something, and we're gonna have a special ed teacher or another para. Where do you, and that we're gonna single out crew as opposed to indoor track where there's 100 kids, or football where there's 80 kids who play. I think, and I'm not saying not to do it, I'm just saying we need to look at the athletic budget as a whole instead of singling out one particular team. What is their entire budget? Do we know their income, their expenses? What do they presented it, but not line for line. And they get money from the boosters, and what is their per student cost? And they have 3 coaches. I mean, there's just a lot of other issues I'm not saying just crew, with all the sports, and we've tackled this issue. And then what about drama? Why don't we give drama another, drama always wants money, and the music program wants money. They want to buy the instruments. There's just there's only so much money to go around, and I understand it's a great program, I do.
Well, I don't think we're arguing about what program is great or not. We're arguing about, or we're trying to be rational about the idea of this is a pressing issue of safety. And so I think that seeing that, I don't know any other sport that has a 1-to-4 ratio of expenses. So here are the kids that are working to present and to fund and to raise money, and then the school is giving only one to to the $4 that they make. That's pretty extraordinary. I really challenge that there's another sport that's like that.
But that's the point, Heidi, we don't know that.
But it is a very expensive sport. Maybe we could, since it's not a school sport, right, it's a club.
No, you didn't, sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't think it's a school, it's a club, from what I understand.
This spring is a varsity at least.
It is a varsity club?
Yes.
It's a 3-season sport.
No, I understand that, but it did, when it first started, it was not a school sport.
That was 22
Right.
years ago.
Right.
Well-
That's how I feel.
Yeah, I just think that it's
Go ahead.
important to take
Marianne?
care of.
Excuse me,
our
can I,
students.
can I just interject for a moment? We've got, I think there's there's two different pieces to this. There's the immediate action this spring.
Right.
If we want to take a look at that, you can bring that back to, we can entertain that back at the cabinet level, we can entertain that at the finance committee level, but that's this year's budget, that's a point of order, that is not on the agenda this evening. Next year's budget approval is on the agenda, to your point. And so I think that's the action that you need to focus on, and whether or not one sport is more valued than the other or more expensive than the other, it is not before you this evening. You're charged with, are you moving the budget forward as presented, which is a 2.88 increase?
Or do we want to add in
Or do you,
$4,200?
or do you want to add in $4,200?
And there's a motion on the floor,
Right.
right? So,
To add in $4,200 to the...
No, the motion.
The current budget
Wait,
would be,
excuse me just a minute.
okay.
The motion was to do this year and next year, so if, it depends, I'm just clarifying what
Yeah.
what
I don't
was.
think we can do this year.
No, we can't.
I don't think we vote to move money. I don't think that's something that is...
No, we
It's
would have
still a motion on
to
the
bring
floor.
that to, right.
So we do withdraw it because it's not an appropriate motion, or we voted...
Heidi could withdraw it, or we could,
Like legally,
Or we
I don't
could
know
vote.
the
I would say
mechanism
just vote on
to
it.
just give them-
or we could vote on it and vote it.
And,
Right.
yes,
I'd also like to say that, I mean, I agree that, I mean, I do think it's premature in a sense because we don't know what our final budget is going to be, and we'll be back here in a month redoing all this, so it will have to be voting on it again. And I also think we don't have the opportunity right now to look at the bigger picture, which I think is important. Actually, I think that's from our perspective as the board, that's really what we're supposed to be doing. We're not here to make these tiny adjustments. We're to set policy and then follow that policy. And I think it would be better if, in keeping with that, if we could look get a larger picture of the athletic expenses and area and make a reasoned decision based on that, and not just, piecemeal, bring up this sport, this much here, that much there. I just don't think that's what we should be doing as a board. And again, that it doesn't speak to the validity of the request or not. I still think there is time between now and the final budget to resolve this
yeah, we
Mm-hmm.
can-
as well. So I just don't think it's right to resolve it in this way tonight, and that is my opinion.
and I'm more than happy to take this year's concerns to the Finance Committee and to address the safety, from a safety perspective, to the equipment. I know that the kids don't ride in the truck, but the equipment does travel with the truck. For the safety of the equipment, I'm happy to take this discussion in the Finance Committee regarding this year, if that helps you make a decision about your motion.
that would be good. We can pass it on to another board to be responsible.
No, us, the Board of Ed Finance Committee.
It's our board. We have a finance
subcommittee.
committee that can
Oh,
address
okay.
their request or their ask for financial help for this year. We can address it in the committee, on the committee level. If you accept that as a resolution
to either amend your motion or withdraw your motion. I'm just presenting you with a solution.
I don't think I really have a choice. I think that it's either amend or withdraw. And so
Or
what
you
was-
can continue with your motion. You don't have to amend or withdraw.
Yeah.
I'm just pointing out what other options you may have.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. That at least is some direction. But I just think that we have responsibilities when we see that there is something that is not working and it is negative for the children, that we need to act on it and not be holding back.
So Heidi, are you going to withdraw your motion and make a new motion?
Okay, fine. I vote to withdraw it. Make a motion to withdraw it.
You sure?
Well, I mean, what can we do?
What's it?
And we will bring the topic to the board of, the subcommittee, the finance and facilities, and also we had already given direction for information from the athletic director. And we have not had an athletic or activities committee since I've been on the board, but Elisa, you said you were, and if that's something that, that's something I think we could talk about, and I think that's a great idea.
Five of us. I was on it, Mark was on it, Marone was on it. Yeah, we used to meet like every once a quarter or something.
So perhaps we'll put that on the March agenda and get that going.
Bring it around.
Sure.
I mean, they're saying that you can't be done.
Okay.
No.
So may I present a motion to approve the 2020-2021 education budget as presented?
Is there further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Nays? Motion passes. Thank you. We will have a short break and then come back for the discussion and direction regarding independent investigation.
Do you want to sign their paperwork or you want them to wait?
Now, it is only 7:30, so we could, would you like us to sign your papers? It's not 8 o'clock yet. We're going to be there for about 5-10 minutes and then come back for discussion. And then if you want, we can sign your papers, but you can stay until 8. That's up to you. We can sign them now if you want. Perfect time for the break. I know, it's just bounces. Thank you very much. We are now back in order, and thank you, Nick Caruso, for joining us and helping with moderating this difficult topic. First, we're discussing the scope of the investigation, and then also some people had asked for a rubric. We'll see if we still feel we need that. We'll get everyone's thoughts on that, and then also see if we can narrow down our field of investigators to 1 or 2. I think there's a couple of good standouts here. So I will hand this over to. Add it to the list. Thank you, Nick. I will hand this over to you. I did speak to all of the investigators that we do have on the list as far as scope, and just to give a little bit of an idea, they all said it does not need to be that specific. Don't narrow them down too much. They will let the investigation lead their way as long as we have our main points in the scope, if that helps anybody.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess I'm going to open it up to you. I see there's a short list on the second page where you start to articulate about following.
Those were just some of my thoughts,
Okay.
and so we need to get the group's thoughts.
Sure.
But those were questions that I had heard from the public and from board members.
So I guess I'll just open it up and ask you what you feel ought to be on the list in the scope.
Okay, I'll start. To identify past victims, we're willing to come forward and provide details to past misconduct by Mr. Chokas or other staff members.
Okay, so identify past victims.
The policies followed.
Pardon me?
The policies followed.
It's OCA.
I know I'm supposed to facilitate, but maybe was the policy correct? Might be another one.
Right.
Check out to
That
make
was
sure
next,
policy.
right, yeah, that would be next, or before.
I think
And
it's
those things change over
yeah,
time.
I think it's a good thing to think about being public officials, that what have our constituents been really concerned about, and try to really address those, because that's what this is about, to make sure that the community comes together as well, not just this board here. So I've gone through all of the articles for the day and reactions to those, as well, a lot of talking to different people, and I think that this is really a good beginning, but I really found 4 areas, and can I just address those, or are we only allowed to do one at a time?
Why don't you
Okay.
just,
The first thing was about what actually did Chokas do? Did he harass, did he abuse, or was he just overly friendly? I think that it's an elephant in the room that we never talk about. And so what happened? Or what did he do? And are there still identifying past victims? I think that talks about that. And who knew but did not know how, or chose not to report? I don't know if was policy followed, but I think it's really finding out what people were responsible for things happening, not trying to become vindictive or cause problems, but I think that we need to see, because in that way we'll see where failings were in the system, as well as
yeah, I'm trying to
failing
think how to
people.
articulate that. And I'm thinking something like, well, it's sort of back to was policy followed, but where there were breakdowns.
Well, yeah,
Were
because
there-
some people didn't maybe know policy, and didn't understand policy. So that's really what we need to understand, is how to educate people in policy.
Well, again, I'm trying to just articulate
Yeah.
your thought. Where were the breakdowns? Is that
Okay.
probably a way of articulating that? Because that could be people or policies or procedures, but it would allow the latitude that, Alexa was saying, give them some latitude to
Sure.
go where they had to go.
I think
Would that-
something like something about communication was the lines of communication, or, something, you know what I'm saying? Like, again, it's hard to articulate it, but where did the communication break down? Between staff, between students, the students reporting, the staff reporting?
Yeah, I think that might be a
So the
different
commu-
issue.
Was there not good accessibility?
Well, it all really goes down to policy, right? Where or
It doesn't, because it's not just policy and
But it's-
procedure, it's people.
people.
But, and again, I'm trying to articulate your thoughts. In my mind, the people would be the ones that broke down in communication or in procedure.
Right.
So, I mean, if you want to, I would assume that as the investigators go through this, they're looking at breakdowns in procedures. If because I'm fairly certain that they would be clearly articulated in one way or another.
Sure. So it's how and why. How did it break down and why did it break down? Because maybe there was a choice in that, and that's the people.
Okay. Choice, misinterpretation, any of the above, that we
Right,
can find
right.
out why.
And then just the final one, which continues to come up, is there is an apparent feeling of distrust toward the high school, and how widespread is this and why is it? I think that is, I'd like to see that as part of the investigator to get a sense of the climate.
That might be a better way of putting
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
sense of the climate.
Now and before even.
Pardon me?
Now and before.
Oh, yeah, well,
Yeah.
I think we want to be a little bit vague because whoever we hire is going to help us formulate this in better words.
Yes, and they all did say that. It just has to be
A statement. So I think we want a short, almost like when we do our goals, it's really short and very broad.
Some bullet points, yeah.
and we can express all of these in more detail to them when we sit and speak with them.
And it's dynamic. It will be a dynamic.
They've all said it's dynamic and it's a continuous and it flows, and each conversation, which some people called it not interview, some people called it a conversation, leads to more questions and leads them in the direction that they, so to keep it open so they don't stay too narrow is pretty important.
Yeah, I like the one term that was used by one of the lawyers, which she said, fluid. It really is fluid.
Yeah.
And that,
So we don't want to lock them into anything in the scope.
This is all
no,
what-
I don't think any of those things lock them in. I think it opens it up to a lot of direction.
So I was pretty specific, and I know we try to be global in our thinking, but interview administrators, teachers, and staff at the school that interacted with Mr. Chokas on a regular basis to inquire if they observed any previous misconduct or unusual behavior or heard rumors or any misconduct associated with Mr. Chokas. That might fit under one of those
Well,
categories.
that's what I'm trying to do, is see
Yeah,
if there's
yeah.
something within that would,
Well, that's sort of telling her how to do the investigation, not as much what it is that
Right.
we want.
right.
So.
And that, I think
and
that
and
gets
she can
back
figure
to-
that out, and then, and maybe that kind of does. Hopefully, she will do that, because we don't feel that our OCA person has done it as much. I think that's what you're kind of
Well,
referring.
my main concern all along was, or is, that there's a lot riding on this investigation. So if we don't kind of get into the weeds and follow leads and talk to the teachers and pretty much everyone that was involved, there won't be a sense of closure in the end. So that's my main. That's my opinion. I realize not everyone may share that, but
No, I do.
yeah.
Well, I
the
think
trust.
it's a legitimate concern to say we want it thoroughly examined. Where we get into the weeds is, the specifics of how to.
Right.
I think that could be part of that conversation that you would have with whoever you choose to say, in essence, you through your superintendent would be saying they have access to whoever they need to talk to, because I think that would be part of what you would have to do, is say, we want to make sure that we ensure the investigator has access to whatever they need to do a thorough investigation. Now, I don't know if that needs to be up here or not. I feel it's almost a given.
I
but-
think from speaking to each of these investigators, that's exactly what they have on their mind. They're all going in with, okay, we're going to start here, and then it umbrellas out that if we're hiring someone with experience, this is just what they do. And they mentioned we'll start with all the records we have already pulled aside and interviewing the administration, because they said they were willing to, names and other people who may reach out to us who want to be interviewed, and then names that come up from there, and they will just continue on from there.
Are you comfortable with that? And do you think your concerns will be addressed? I guess I want to make sure.
Say it again.
Yeah, so
Just say it again
so
so I can.
as I look through the different applicants, I'm just concerned that I want to make sure we hire someone that has a law enforcement background, whether it's a lawyer that's been a prosecutor, or I just don't want to hire a labor lawyer who's moonlighting, doing investigations. I'm being blunt here. That's important to me. So when I said I want someone that kind of looks under the carpet, follows leads. It's just my
Would it be-
concern that that happens.
Yeah. So I guess, and again, I'm just trying to help
Yes.
frame this for everybody. Is that a criteria for choosing someone, or is that a criteria to help them understand the scope of what they're being asked? Because I think the word thorough comes to mind,
Yes.
you know, but whether it needs to be articulated here or just expected, I guess that would be my only question. Do we want to fill this up with a bunch of things that are and again, it takes nothing to put it down if people felt that need, but to me, that's almost something you'd expect. Looking through the resumes, you could pick people that I think could give you a sense that they'd be thorough. I mean, I've seen a couple of the names, and the couple I've seen I know are thorough, but.
Well, I think what Jack is saying is a good point in that that could be part of the interview. Maybe we don't put it up there, but just asking them, what is your procedure? What would be the first thing that you do?
Oh, I was
What
thinking
kind of interviews? And that would give a sense of the way that he or she would approach this, I think, because we're asking about
Yeah,
approach.
it's hard because, you know, I'm a small business owner, and if I were hiring somebody, obviously I wouldn't sit down and do this exercise. I'd just try to find someone that had a good background, that had done this before. I'd sit down and talk with them and get a sense of, you know, if they were right for the job or not.
So when you own your own business, because I did for years, you
Yes.
don't have to go to a committee and ask,
That's true.
what do we agree to?
True, right.
Okay, well, let's park that, but
Okay.
again, if you, through the rest of this, you don't feel it's
Sure.
covering it, we can go back to it and talk a little more. Come over on this side of the room. I want you to,
What else?
I just have, I just want to get some understanding. So are we looking, do you want to go back as far as the teacher in question was hired, from the date of his hire? Do you want to go back 5 years? Do you have any thoughts on this? You don't, it's open-ended, okay? And did you think about, you don't want to limit the budget? So you want to be unlimited budget that you spend on this?
They, from talking to each of them and from doing some other reading, they don't give they give their hourly rate and they give an idea, but they don't know how long this will take. But each one of them said they would update us, as not necessarily with the details, but to update how they've gone and then do we want them to go further? Do we want them to go
I'm
further?
not trying to put a price
Which will
tag.
help to.
I'm not trying to put a price tag on this. I'm just trying to kind of like find some guidance maybe from, I'm with you. I'm looking, and it's not to park there, but I'm looking for somebody with some kind of experience who've tried, defended, prosecuted sexual harassment cases to work for us as our investigator, because they will have a better understanding of what we're dealing with and can qualify the situation, the conditions, and how the policies, procedures were broken, intact or not. But when we find that person, my thought is that we need to get a sense from that person, that investigator, what is this could cost us? Because if they've done something similar to this, they would have an idea or a clue, so we can at least figure out how we're going to pay for this. Because we're towards the end of our budget. We have a certain amount of money allocated for certain things. If we need more money, maybe we can go back to the Board of Finance and ask for more money. But I think as a sensible ask from us to that person is to understand what it could cost us, just so we can manage to that or forecast that expense in our budget. I think that's a reasonable ask.
Does it make sense from that perspective too, to look at the investigation in segments, like say, go back 5 years or X years, then go back 2X years, or depending on what you found, or if it needs to be more investigated, or how much it's costing, so that you don't. I am concerned a little bit with the open-ended being, you know, what if it's $250,000?
well,
Can we really decide at what point we're going to stop the investigation? Because if it is not complete, we're just going to have to start a whole nother one again. We really have to wear the lens of the constituents, because once again, we'll get a lot of pushback And we need to remove the shadow of distrust that does hover over this high school
If I
now.
could just add one thing, because the district I was involved in when I was a board member had a couple situations like this. And what can happen is, as publicity comes out that someone is investigating, sometimes additional students will say, I have somebody I can talk to. So you won't know that until that process starts. So it's possible, you know, back to the list of, we want to know some, you know, other victims, that may happen in the natural course of the investigation. So again, that makes it harder to put that hard number
No,
on it. But
I'm not necessarily trying to stop it at a sense or a time, but I'm trying to get a
saying
sense.
more about like assessing it as
Assess-
you go along, not necessarily saying, you just have to, just don't say, I'm going to spend whatever. If it's $30 million, you're not going to spend that.
No, no.
You're just saying, let's stop at each point and take a look at it and see
But I
what's
think whoever we hire is going to, they're not going to say, I'm going to start 20 years ago. They're going to start here and go
Right.
backwards and then say, okay, I don't need to go back another 5, the pattern's there.
Right.
I've
The
got
answers.
I've got the policies.
Right.
The policies are current, and so they'll look at that first. And then, I don't want to put you can only go back 10 years.
No, I'm not saying, I didn't
No,
say that.
he's
I
saying
said-
that.
No, I'm just saying that's what I would, but I think that they're going to find saying like, okay, I'm good. And
But I
we'll
thought-
be getting these updates and we can say, okay, but when people come forward and say, oh my God, I want to talk to you, I don't want to, I was there 15 years ago, I don't want to say to them, no,
So-
you can't, you're outside the scope. But I think it's going to find it's.
But I thought that's why we're making the scope. I
Well,
think that should be our checklist, that we know when the investigation is over, when we've gone over these things, we can flip back the page, we can see that and say, well, do we know what he did? Do we know the level? Do we feel comfortable that there are children out there who know, even if they're 31, that they could come in? I think that's what we need to know. So I'm not sure if we can say when the investigation is at, $2,000, we have to stop it. And yet we don't know
I think
anything.
there's kind of two things that you want to be concerned about. One is, can they help us understand that we now have policies and procedures in place that it couldn't happen again? That there's a set of checks and balances through administration, DCF, whatever, so that they would be helping you do a check on your processes to ensure that, again, assuming everybody is honest about this stuff, that we've now created a situation where that should never be able to happen again. Then you have the second issue of what happened, where were the shortcomings, and how do we rectify that, or have they been rectified?
Now, I don't, like Heidi was just saying, I don't know if this person interacts with Sarah Egan because we don't want.
No, they don't.
Because there's-
For that
but
reason, they
that's-
want it
but
independent.
What I'm saying is, I don't want them to duplicate efforts. So if Sarah seems like she's doing them moving forward. The new this is how you should update your policies. So I don't want this person who we're actually paying to do any of that. And so I wouldn't want that in the scope to help us move forward with policies. 'Cause I don't think
If we needed to, we could probably always add
we could
that.
add that, but I don't think we really need, because that's what I think we're going to get from Sarah Egan.
I would agree at this point. Oh,
And so I
I've
don't
seen.
want to, I want to keep it broad. I don't want them to overlap.
Can I just make a quick comment? I think, some of the applicants have done work even locally. This firm worked with New London. I think we can say to them, what's this, just ballpark, what's it going to cost? And we'll get a soft number at least, and then we can work from there.
Yeah.
That's my original ask. That's all I want.
All of these attorneys would do that. And I am a little concerned about someone local, truthfully, because we don't know who's going to know whom.
Yeah, no, they're not local.
They did local work, I think I heard.
Yeah.
They did local.
So the other thing that I think we should also consider and talk about is part of the challenge with this whole situation is sometimes the kids, because they're young, they haven't seen enough, don't.
Go ahead, you're in the middle of a sentence.
Is that they don't well define what is appropriate and what is not appropriate behavior by a person. So I think it's important that we also know if there is other inappropriate behaviors happening that we're not aware of in the school. I trust that there aren't, but I don't know. I mean, trust and verify, right? So I'm trying to verify that we don't have any other inappropriate behavior, including bullying by a teacher or by, is there an opportunity for us if we're launching this investigation is to, as they are there watching the climate, when they ask the question, to kind of have these questions asked in a fashion so we can understand what do they believe is appropriate, when appropriate, and if there's other behaviors that we should consider if the policies fit or don't fit.
I'm afraid that will get to be like a tentacle octopus that's asking all the bad things that are happening in the school, and could she please investigate it, he or she investigate it to see. I think that gets too broad a little bit, maybe.
What can happen is, as they're in the school talking to people,
Sure.
sometimes other names comes up.
Right.
Again, in our district, that's actually what happened.
That's
A
what I'm
second
asking.
teacher's name came up, and in our case, the police were doing the investigation, so they investigated the other teacher. Now, here's where it got sticky for us, and I only offer this as some advice. The second teacher, the accusations were fairly strong. One girl in particular said he actually placed his hands on her. But through the investigation, the girl later said, well, I was mad because he failed me on a quiz, and I just wanted to get even, and man, did she. So again, you don't want to get involved as a board in presumption of anything, but through that investigation, if there is someone out there, there's a great likelihood that that name's going to come up. And then obviously they would have to do their job, their due diligence, to give you the advice you need to move forward. So I don't know if that helps or not, but again, having lived through it, it's and in this case, there was criminal time, there was jail time for this one particular teacher. So it can get very serious.
Farouk, I think what you're saying is really important, and that's what I think is really good with our Safe Futures, because there are workshops now that the children can really begin to identify this, to be able to separate just bad bullying from sexual harassment, that they're going to be able to delineate that through this kind of workshop. So this investigator is not, it's not going to all stop just with the investigator. It's really ongoing with Safe Futures with the teachers, with the students, and with past students. So I think that's what you're saying, and that's been a concern of mine. That's why I really wanted Safe Futures to be a part.
And I guess it is part of what I'm trying to gain from this investigation, is to find a way how we can communicate better with our kids and teach them what is appropriate, what is not. I mean, because I don't want to go down the road of who I talk to and how they describe the behavior. But the thing is that sometimes you ask the kid and you think that was appropriate, or and they're like, yeah, why not? So it's important that we educate our kids along the way.
Right.
And maybe it's not for the investigation, but if we learn from something from the investigation that can help us put together.
Well, the other thing, I'm looking at your accountability matrix, and I mean, you've got goals specific to climate, and I think that what you learn from that could influence how you address these goals too. So there's another approach to, more on the policy side, how can we make corrections to the culture of the school to protect, to make people feel safe to come forward or whatever. So
That's a good idea. Definitely. That's good. That's the trust factor.
And I appreciate, this is your comment about not trying to duplicate the Mrs. Egan effort, but this is what got us here. So let's it's not. I wish I know what she investigated so I can have a better understanding for
Yes.
this.
There will be some overlap, but.
Of course.
And hopefully we'll get her report in the interim, so then we can say, okay, we got this, how can that, and maybe this investigator can help us mesh them together
Yeah, definitely.
and incorporate what she says.
or at least identify the ones that your attorney would then, hey, we've noticed some inconsistencies here. You should, when you're doing that change, fix that.
With that report, she can, if this person.
Why do we not want them to interact with one another or not?
Because they need to be an independent investigator, so they're using their own opinions, their own eyes, they're talking to many people. Not saying
just
that
so
they
they
might
don't-
not then take a look, once they've done their due diligence, maybe they're going to look at some of the information.
Just so they don't
That's what I
duplicate.
meant more, that they're.
Yeah.
No influence.
Share.
Right.
Again, I know some of that is the perception that you want your community to feel that somebody was really given the marching orders, go out, do this, come back, whatever it's going to look like, we want to know.
Right.
And so you want to restore that confidence in your community that you've done that.
Definitely.
So are we looking for one broad scope statement, or are we just going to say bullet it?
They seem to want a statement.
A statement? So let's flip back to the first page and start
Yeah.
writing, because I think it's going to be
Yes.
one sentence or two sentences.
Yeah. I don't know if some of those words can get put
We need those
into-
words, policy, communication.
Yeah, but I think that we were broad enough with each one of those that to begin to
Right.
meld them together, we're going to lose pieces of it. So just make a long sentence with and.
That's what we're
Or,
We can bullet.
or one sentence with to include ...
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
So if you wanted to, let's go over, and then we can just, and you can sort of wordsmith this as you type it, it gets typed up, but what would that overarching sentence, paragraph?
The first page back. Can you rip them up and put them like on the chair
Yeah,
or something?
Yeah.
Put them on the floor.
Do you need help?
Is that-
You've got to type on it.
Go stairs, just go home.
You can do a Vanna White.
A generalized statement.
Sort of works.
You know what? We can do this like that, hold on.
What about if you put it on that screen? It will probably hold
Oh, yeah.
in the screen.
It could, but
Just tape
it's
it or
bringing a
tape it on.
piano or something.
Bring big easels.
So, Alexa, where's that, you had something that you wrote for an introductory.
Oh, I have it.
That's very high tech, Nick.
Rob, could you just sit there and hold it?
Rob, make yourself useful.
Vanna White.
I don't think it has to go higher.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Heidi, I have.
Oh, you can say, yeah,
Yeah.
so say it.
Okay.
I roughed out something that might work or get people's minds started in the direction or throw out some ideas. Something along the line of an independent investigation with respect to the administration's knowledge of and response to misconduct allegedly engaged in by a former Stonington teacher, Tim Chokas, or something. Does any of that lead or start us off?
I just thought we were going to have sort of an introductory sentence that would segue then into these bulleted, because I think all of this is really good, and I think it gets lost a little
agree.
bit with that.
So
I agree.
Say that, your sentence again?
But I agree with Heidi. I jotted this down to help get us started, but we've already gotten, I think, beyond
There was
that.
something in there that was.
No, that was it.
Yeah, that was it.
That
Can't
was
you
it.
just hand them the list?
Yeah, can't you hand
I
him
mean, I
a
think we could
list?
just say the Stonington Board of Education is
Concerned.
investigating or is looking at the following.
Let's see.
Like and was policy followed?
No, that's all the bulletin things, but this is just saying, we have this, we want an investigation.
If you just, Stonington Board of Education calls for an independent investigation to examine
the
Yes.
following.
improprieties,
I say the following and then bullet,
the following.
Yeah, don't-
And then,
but not
yeah.
limited to the following. Because you don't want to tie us in.
Right.
Right, right.
Because
And
then
then
that is making an assumption about how he did act, and we want to know it very clearly, the extent of it or lack of extent.
I think that's good.
I like it. Okay,
do you
let's look
think?
at this. Identify past victims, yes.
Was
now
policy
let's
followed? Was
take a
policy
look at our
correct?
bullets just to make sure they cover.
Is policy followed? Is policy correct?
The term identify past victims,
Yeah.
somehow, that's not quite right, because that sounds like they're going to like go
Yeah,
searching for them, and I
Right.
don't know if that is allowed in terms
No.
of confidentiality, I mean, but more like the opportunity for them to participate or volunteer, or, I don't know, something.
I think we had a concern about past students who maybe were still struggling with the discomfort.
One of the sorry.
Go ahead.
One of the main reasons for doing this was there's quite a disconnect between what the administration was reporting and what Joe Wojcik was saying in the paper. And I want to know how many students were involved, how many students were impacted by this guy. So you want to change the wording a little bit, but
Yeah,
I
how do
feel
we
very-
phrase it, I think
feel-
is more
I feel
the
very
question.
strongly about that. That's my most important.
Yeah, that's how I
We're never going to
started
get an
it.
exact number, but.
I understand.
I know,
Number.
I'm trying to think of how you would say
Yeah.
that, like, what was the
I
extent?
hate to
What was
use the word, but
extent
it sort of identify the scope of the situation.
What was the
Was it
extent of
a
the-
few, a lot, that,
I
one's
mean,
too many, but.
Yeah, it's,
But that, we get that too also with what did he do? You know, what was the extent of, was it, because we've never, well, we hardly mentioned his name. So was it sexual harassment? Was it sexual abuse? And right now, the way that we talk about it, he was just overly friendly. So,
Well, that gets to the big question, that
yeah.
is what happened.
What happened?
Yeah.
And in the what happening, the way that they will find that is by interviewing what we call them as survivors. We don't call them victims, that's safe
Right.
futures. Yeah.
In
So-
terms of
so the-
timeline and number of kids and all.
Yeah.
how about number of students impacted?
I like that.
Yeah.
And how long was it going on? We have vague dates.
It's hard writing on paper when it's like this. That's a good way of putting that. And so we kind of don't need that one because you cover it with that
Yeah,
one.
I like that wording.
Well, we may have discussed this already. It's okay if I talk?
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm also interested in knowing how many students reported it to the administration.
Yeah.
Is that in there? Okay.
It's not up there, but I
Okay,
had that on
okay.
the list as well.
And what happened with those reports?
Well, that's kind of where were the breakdowns, was it communication, because I think that's part of, back to, were there correct policies in place? Were they followed? If they weren't, that's where the breakdowns were.
Yes.
That's what you're speaking to, is who didn't do their job.
But we were told there were two.
A couple of my,
And-
the way I phrased it, not saying this is how it should go forward. Did students report incidents that rose to the level of sexual harassment by staff but were not followed through on? Were there incidents of sexual harassment that students did not report because they did not have a comfortable avenue to report such incident? I think those are both a couple of, I don't know if that touches what you were saying.
And it's getting back to the community. I mean, it's been reported in the paper that or insinuated that students came forward and spoke to the administration, and then they didn't necessarily treat them like they were complaints. They might have been concerns. So that aspect of it needs to be clarified, so everyone knows, this number of students came forward, and this is what happened.
Yeah.
So, Well, I guess I'd go back to, because your policy is probably pretty specific.
The
I mean,
how
that-
and why of the breakdown, I think, is good.
Yeah,
You
but
know.
if the policy was correct, that's why I say I still think they need to assess, and
Right.
it may have changed over time. 10
Right.
years ago, it may have been very different. Certainly, state laws on obligations of reporting have changed over 10, 15 years. So what may currently be a mandated reporting situation may not have been back then. Doesn't mean it shouldn't have. That's when your policy would really be important. So to go back and say, did our policy articulate what should happen if a student has an issue? And then if we had a policy, because if your policy didn't cover it, it's hard to then go back to your administration and say you didn't adhere to policy, because they may have.
Right.
Again, there's always right and wrong too, but so it starts with, was the policy, did the policy do what it was supposed to, articulate what it should have, and then was it followed? And that gets to who didn't follow it.
And why?
And why, and that gets to what happened, et cetera, yeah.
But to Jack's point, I appreciate policies and procedures.
Yep.
But there's a common sense in terms of how you handle a child and how you handle a child concern.
Yes.
So I'd like to know, like, how was that reported, right, to the administration? How did the child report the incident to the administration? And how did we react to it? You know, because regardless if there was a policy or it requires them to report it, there's,
Well said.
Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It is well said.
Right.
But I think we're also getting a little, we're narrowing in. And I
Right.
think we don't want to be narrowing in. So I think what we have when we say was policy followed, like,
You-
the
what-
big picture, so
yeah.
all these questions, how many, who did they report to, those are all going to come out. And we can hone in on those as part of the
Yeah,
broader
that's-
scope.
See,
but I think
that's
we-
why I've been narrowing.
But
because
I think if
I'm
we
very
narrow it down, we
concerned
get
that-
into a box of like, this is
Right.
what we're looking at. So
All of these attorneys, this is what they do.
They narrow it
And they go after the facts and the details, and they're going to ask these questions. And if not, we're going to direct them to ask these questions.
Yeah, I think as they report back to you
Right.
the progress, that's another opportunity to say, and by then you may also it may raise new questions
Right.
as you hear what they found.
Yeah, that's-
That's part of your process with them, is to say, okay, thanks for what you've done so far. Did you think about this? Or
Yeah.
what's next for us? What's
I understand wanting to constantly try to keep it at 10,000 feet, but we're spending the taxpayers' money here,
Yeah.
and I want a result that is very clear.
Yeah, we don't
Very
stop till we
clear.
do.
I don't, if you give them this open-ended, go do what you do best, well, we all know from companies, Boeing and all, they don't always do what we need to be specific, and that's just my opinion, so.
and I'm with you. I mean, regardless, this board has a moral obligation to meet in this situation beyond like what the community is saying or not saying. I have a moral obligation to meet. If I don't belong on this board if I'm not going to protect the children and do what's right for them, and make sure that if there's nothing happened or if the reporting was different, we need to just put the truth. We need to find the truth.
Yeah, the
No.
truth is, well, I think.
But I don't think any of us are arguing that. Let's get back to getting,
Yeah.
homing in on the scope.
Well, like I said, your sentence sort of starts the process, and then I guess it's a question of which of these do we want to bullet as part of this list.
So
So,
I
I
think Farouk has brought up something which I think is kind of interesting. Maybe we have it here or not, but when there was that whole discussion on whether something was a complaint or a concern, do we have something here that can talk about interpretations that happen with policy and procedure?
I think that will come during the interviews, certainly.
Well, they're reporting to us all the time, so that's something that we can look at.
Yeah.
And, and to I think you'll be good at this when you're interviewing the different consultants or the different
Right.
investigators. I don't know whether you plan on narrowing it down to a handful, couple.
It would
whatever,
be
but-
great to narrow it down to two, I think.
But as you're doing the interview, I think that's where you hit a little harder on some of the detail questions, because I don't think that that should be under the scope necessarily, but it would certainly speak to your comfort level with them doing the job the way you believe it should be done.
Right.
So you'll get your chance to hone in, where I think it'll probably do more good.
Thank you.
So if we're looking at that list, I think procedures and policies you could sort of group together.
Yeah.
So you could say were policies and procedures correct and followed.
Right.
All the way down. Communication and breakdowns and how and why are sort of one.
Yeah, they are.
Right? Where did the communications break down and why did they break down?
Yeah.
Yep.
And then what happened would be number one.
Right.
So that would go to the top. What actually happens in terms of extent, year, something.
Okay, so kind of group all that.
So what happened would be the first thing, because that would be the first thing they have to find out, what happened. And then was policy and procedures followed, were they correct? Were they followed correctly? Are they correct?
Right, two different
Were
questions.
the reporting
Or both.
laws
Yep.
followed, all that sort of stuff, that's grouped into that section. And then there's the communication section, where were the breakdowns in communication? Was the complaints, why were they deemed not complaints? Why did they break down? What were the students not comfortable
Yeah.
coming forward?
Yeah, all
And
of
who
those
talked to
things.
who, what letters, emails, all that stuff is all grouped into communication.
Yeah.
So that's how I would break this down.
That
So to
sounds
get right to
good.
the point, that's how I would break it down.
So
into those three
does what
things.
happened include the spectrum of survivors that
Yes.
there were?
Yes, how many, how, the time extent, what would he do, if we can narrow that down? Who came forward? You know, when did they come forward? Who
Right.
did they talk to? And then it sort of moves into the communication aspect, like, why didn't that go further than
Yeah.
that?
You know, some of that may end up being out of the scope of the board. For instance, they may have referred them to other agencies, and then for whatever reason, the other agencies may not have followed up for
Right.
whatever reason. All you can make sure is that your people did their due diligence,
Right.
and if they made the appropriate referrals.
Right, that's all I'm
Right.
looking
Yeah.
for. Yes,
Yeah.
we did this, and.
But that goes right back to what happened. Give
Right,
us a,
so that would be my investigation right there.
Yeah. I like that.
I think that covers.
What do you think? Okay,
And it will
it will flow.
flow.
Yeah.
They all said as the interviews go on, other things may come up, they'll bring those up to us and say, do you want me to follow up on
Did
this?
sense of climate get in there? We'd put that in there,
Oh,
right?
climate, yeah, let's get.
It's
sense of
huge.
climate.
Well, see, to me, I think that's a board issue outside of this.
But I think that it could be something that really comes up with each interview that she does, that, you know, what do you think about the school now? What, are there feelings of change? We need to know that as a board. We can't know that, although I've talked to a lot of people about it, but she's going to be talking to a lot of people that have been really impacted by this. So what are we dealing with?
That could
So-
be in communication, are they scared to come forward?
Well, you know,
What is
No,
stopping?
we are doing this for our constituents.
Is
We
that
have to
something
think
that
of
Safe Futures is addressing, the climate?
No, I think that people come up and that might come out, but if it just became part of, the lack of trust that's felt about the high school right now is huge. And it's something that is pervasive. It's not just about coming and telling about a sexual harassment. I don't trust, I'm not going to go up and talk to my teacher about the fact that I don't really understand because I feel uncomfortable. I don't trust the teachers here. Or it's bigger than just this particular investigation. So, and that's important for us as a board to understand that.
So
We can't get out there. This
How about
will be
this?
our opportunity.
So how about this as a bullet 4? identify potential climate issues, because they're not going to give you the answers on how to fix it.
No.
But as they're investigating, they may see some trends or some things that are sort of constant, and you could ask them to give us a report back on, are there some cultural issues that contributed to this?
Yes, that. The contribution, yeah. That's what we would want. Is it deeper than just a teacher that transgressed?
Right.
Is it deeper? If we fix this, is it just putting another rug over something that is a lot of vermin underneath, and we really need to look that up? And I think you find that out by saying, what are you feeling about this? Why? Then you're going to get a little bit deeper in what Farouk was saying.
In my mind, what stands out about this last one, the first three may identify a specific task that has to happen, whether it's through administration or through the board, dealing with a policy, dealing with perhaps a discipline issue somewhere down the line.
Correct.
But this is the one that you get to put on your policy hat again and kind of think long term. And again, it speaks to the goals that you've got. How do we look at it's a good way of assessing, do we have a climate that either encourages this type of behavior?
Exactly.
Or does it allow people who are presented with something like that to understand how they can get out of it?
Right.
So that's like the long term, like the strategic look at what the problem is, where these are more tactical, I think.
Right. And each one,
We have some student climate surveys.
We do.
That we can share with them so they can see what.
They actually were very good, because that was the first thing I looked at when those came out because of everything going on. Yeah.
Yeah, but if I remember at our retreat, we talked about adding a question
Right.
that talked a little bit about how does that teacher, does he ever make he or she feel
Right,
inappropriate?
right. We haven't done that
And
yet,
that's
I
going to
don't
be a
think.
big,
So we won't have that in time
We
for the
won't have that in time,
investigation.
but-
we'll be using that to
I think that might
help
have been
going
Craig's
forward.
suggestion. I think that was a
Yeah.
good one, yeah.
And I like the new anonymous thing that you can do on the online.
Right.
Where you don't have to give your name, but you can just say, problem.
Yeah.
Surveys are anonymous.
I can hear
The
you.
surveys,
Surveys are anonymous.
Yeah, so if you have a problem going on, you can address it and say that this is something that needs to be addressed, because some kids that's what they expressed, that they were reluctant about going up and
right.
talking about it.
They have a report now online that you can just go in and report,
It's
yeah.
a good scope. I like that
Yeah,
scope.
I think that scope is good.
Would
I
it
feel
benefit to
comfortable.
also have, to work with the teachers to see if teachers are comfortable that,
Oh, I hope
They
that's
filled out- they fill out the
investigation.
climate survey as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I hope teachers will, of course, be included in this investigation. We'll
I would
ask them
assume they would
that.
have to.
Yeah, okay, good.
Especially when you get to this last question about, what's the climate like, I think they would have to do that.
And one thing everyone needs to remember is absolutely every person I spoke to said it is voluntary. Nobody has to participate. And that's why it's good to have someone with experience, because that's what they do.
So it looks like you've got your list.
We have our list. On to,
And now we pick the lawyers? And now we just pick the lawyers?
right, I don't know that we need a rubric, not necessarily. You had mentioned that beforehand, but I think, I think we can narrow it down. I listed them by just their initials on a rubric piece of paper. I didn't know if we wanted to be sitting here throwing around names, but,
I think we can.
okay, they've all been notified.
I don't feel uncomfortable mentioning it by name. It's public documents, right?
Yeah, I mentioned to all of them that we were doing this,
Right.
so.
So do you want to just say who we like? We want to bring in two? I have a top two.
I have a top two. We can see how many are the same. Go ahead.
I added one.
Yeah, I read that
I
one.
did provide
Yeah.
We
that.
got that one, yeah.
Yep. The main, I'm saying something I already stated, which I apologize. The main thing for me is I'm hoping that this person has some law enforcement background. That's important to me. And this particular firm has a retired FBI agent that works in town. Is this the time where I start saying okay. They have worked on quite a few other cases And most of the people who are the investigators have a background in either law enforcement or they were part of a legal team and they worked on the prosecution end of things. So that's my 2 cents. I have a top 2 as well.
So what may end up being simple, it probably won't be, but if somebody gives me their top 2, and then we can see how much agreement there is on that, and then if we start adding, I even have little colored sticky dots if we need them, so you can vote if we have to.
I'll do
They're
my
out in my
top
car, but I got them.
Okay.
I have a top 1 and then a top 2, second.
Well, somebody give me their top.
Paula Anthony
Paula Anthony?
is my top 1.
Can you mind explaining your thinking?
She has a lot of experience. She's
Yes,
been
she does.
recommended by several people to me. I liked her, that she's done it a lot.
Yeah. By quite a few and a variety of people, I should say,
Right.
recommended.
Now, was she anybody else's number 1?
Yes.
No, okay, so we have.
But I really, I'm hoping that we're going to bring it forth too.
Yes, oh.
For interview.
Yes.
Because Paula really was my top 1, but, and I talked to her a lot, and I really liked what she said, which helped me with liking about the investigators. She said, I really like putting pieces together. And that was convincing to me, that she was excited about gathering resources, synthesizing. Not one was enough, and that's what I think we're saying that we really want. But then when I saw Christine, and I really liked a lot. I haven't talked to her. I just liked what she looked like.
She's a lot the same.
She's my other
very
second. She's
me
my other
too.
top 2.
She looked good on paper.
That was my 1, 2
Paula,
also.
That's
Paula
my
was
1, too.
good in person, so I liked hers.
Those were my top 2.
I'm going to definitely not
That was my
editorialize. I
1,
know
2
her well,
also.
but
Yeah, he actually
so
has
we,
experience
so
with
how
her.
many had Chris Chitty as their
Well,
first?
wait a second, we have
As their
3
first.
others.
Oh,
You had 1, 1, 1. So we had 3 1s for Chris?
I'm
Or you're-
they're
it could be
even to
either
me,
one.
so.
Okay. But at least there seems to be a consensus on these 2 to some extent, but you also have,
I'll give them my 2.
you've been quite, so you had a different firm that you wanted to
Yeah,
suggest?
first, again, getting back to the actually wanting someone with a history and
Yep.
learning.
And the name is?
Frank. My first choice is this DLA law firm, not law firm.
DLA.
Investigative firm, DLA.
consulting services.
Okay. We had,
Alexa handed them out,
What?
Oh, I didn't see
right?
it.
Or they were on the table.
I passed one to you, I thought.
You did.
Here, you can take mine.
It got lost in my papers.
If you look at the scope of what they've proposed, it's very thorough. And I think right out of the gate, if they're that thorough, that impresses me. And that's my first choice. And my second choice is Frank
I don't know.
Rudwitz. Rudwitz.
so we had a lot of consensus on these 2 and strong arguments for 2 more, but this is, now I don't know how far you want to go this evening. Do you want to try to build consensus?
I would like to get it down to 2 because this is the only way we're going to be able to move forward.
There are 2 people wanted, Frank.
That's my 1 and 2.
And I just saw DLA tonight, but I did like what I just read. So if there's any help by me saying I like them as number 2 choice for me.
From DLA, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Where did I put them? I'll give them to you.
Now, are those both men?
So the DLA has a woman who's in, she worked in the London office, the FBI office in London, and she's retired. And so they utilize her. She's also worked with other school systems. Her name is, I forget what her name is. But she lives in Mystic.
See, I'm very, very concerned about anybody local. There's just, we don't know who's involved in this, and we really have to have no connection to anybody.
She doesn't have kids in the school system.
But she lives in Mystic. It's a really small town.
Yeah, well, I disagree, respectfully.
All right, so,
Craig, did you have a person?
Chris.
Oh.
so I guess I would throw the question out, and again, being sensitive to everybody's thoughts on this, there seems to be a fairly significant consensus that these two probably should be interviewed.
Yes.
The question is, do any of you feel obliged to either substitute one of these for one of these or add a third?
I think
And it's democracy, so it's what you think.
I think it's fair to you, Jack, to have one of yours because you don't have anybody. You don't have.
Well, we could do Paula, Chris, and then the DLA. Is that right? For interviews, does that sound
Yes.
reasonable?
Yeah, because Fruc like DLA as well. So.
Right,
Oh,
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I liked
I
what
think
they.
three's a good number.
I liked if you read their proposal, it just was thoughtful.
It was very
I thought it was
thoughtful.
thoughtful.
Yeah, it is. And actually, I would use some of these questions.
Yeah,
And
they're
interviewing.
really good.
Right,
They
it was.
intrigued
It
me,
was
so
very
that's why I'm
thoughtful.
saying DLA
So-
might be a viable candidate.
So I'll do those three. the top
And let's meet with them. And I really hear you, Heidi, on the male-female
Yes.
concern you have. But let's interview them on the merit, and then we can ask them to have a female present in case we need, if we pick them. And I know that the owner is a male, but we can ask to conduct the investigation in a certain way that we offer the survivors the opportunity to speak freely. Because if that's one of your concerns.
And we can bring up the question about the concern about any connection to anybody, so that can be alleviated if that's still on the plate.
One other question you may think to ask them, just in terms of when this is done, this investigation's done, how would they look to present this or suggest to you to present it to the community? I mean, it may be that you work through them. It may also be that you want to bring someone else in, considering how important it is to this community, that maybe you have some help with someone who does public relations work for this
Exactly.
particular issue.
That was my
That's
thing.
very big.
Yeah.
That's, for
Yeah.
me, that's a big part.
Because
of this.
you want, because there may be people who, their reactions may be such that they think it's worse than it is, or maybe it's not as bad. You know,
Right.
you'll know when you get the
Exactly.
report,
Yeah.
but you may have to convince some people who are sure that things were really terrible that maybe it wasn't. So that's going to have to be part of your communication strategy, is how do we make, and I'm hearing over and over again, we want to be transparent. We want to make sure people hear the truth. But some people may not want to hear the truth unless you're very good at articulating it. So something else to
Yep.
think about as you go forward.
Very much so. Yep. So I will contact, Jack, you have the contact for DLA. Did you want to contact them, or did you want me to? You can let me know, but either way,
Whatever you prefer.
we'll look at that and we'll see who has,
I guess we can talk about this later, but is this going to be an all-in-one night thing, a night for 3 nights,
I think all in one night.
all-in-one, just so you can keep them all fresh in your head?
Yeah.
yeah, and then maybe we can then just go right in.
I'm just wondering.
That way we
How we
don't
thought
drag
we
it out. First, I think I'll reach out to all of you to see when over the next week and a half, 2 weeks, you're available, if everybody wants to be there for the interviews, okay?
And
maybe we
3
can-
of them to find a common date.
I think if we give them a couple of choices, I think they all seemed like they were pretty
They could come.
available.
And we can limit each of them to a presentation and Q&A session to a certain time.
Oh, I think we do, it's 45 minutes, half an hour, something. We limit their time.
I think a half hour at this
We also
point,
don't want them
because these are
running-
professionals, they know exactly what they're doing.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So whatever it is, and it's like an interview, you have a half an hour.
Yeah.
If you articulate the interview, they're not going to be articulate.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. Very good point.
Excellent.
Nick, I want to thank you very much for everything and your help tonight. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Nick.
And
That's my agenda in the process.
I think we can, yes. Yes, we can read them.
Are you going to take a stab at actually formally writing them up?
Yep, Anna. I asked her to do it as she's so good at that. Okay, do we have any comments from citizens related to board action?
Have people seen this? We should turn it around.
Go up to the podium if you don't mind.
Do you want us to turn this around?
No, we're fine.
We've just been writing, maybe we wrote nothing.
Oh, no. At least I'm scribbling.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You have to speak into the microphone because it has to be recorded.
Okay, Faith Leitner. Number one, I want to thank you for having this workshop tonight. I think this was really a good step in transparency. I really appreciated it. You covered a lot of bullet points tonight. I would just add one bullet point to the list. When you have volunteers such as staff members talk to whomever you decide is going to be running the investigation, that they feel that there won't be any repercussions from what they have to say. I know that staff members might be worried about whether their job is in jeopardy or not. So I want them to feel safe that they're able to talk and not feel that administration will have something to do with them in the future. Also, Mrs. Egan, we're at now 5.5 months. If she has another delay, is it possible to maybe get an update from her? No? Okay. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, babe. I think that's something you ask the lawyers. How do they do it anonymously? Let's get that jacket she's wearing. I always want that today.
Are there any other comments from citizens? Do we have any comments from board members?
So that's a very legitimate question, and it's a great question.
I think we posed that to the investigators, and I think they find a way to keep those names anonymous.
Okay.
I'm sure that's not a unique concern.
For students and...
Well, of course, for students, that's understood, but also for the adults.
And we can propose to the investigators, or discuss with them what we call in my line of work is the power, permission, and protection, the 3 Ps. So we give the individuals the power to speak what they have, we give them the permission to do that, and we give them the protection.
And agenda items for the March meeting, we have the young lady from West Vine coming, who is on the governor's committee. She's coming to speak to us, so that would be great to have her. Elisa will add the athletic subcommittee. Maybe you can give some background on how it worked before. Maybe it's not just athletics, maybe it's athletics and activities. I don't know, something to think about. Are there any other items for agenda in March? Oh, March 10th is our budget presentation to the Board of Finance.
Just as an aside, do we have any, when the paraprofessionals come, do we have any jurisdiction over?
No. We're not part of that negotiations.
Yeah. They should know that. I mean,
They do.
I feel, okay. That's good.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody.